Hi everyone, very good afternoon. I hope you got some time to connect with colleagues and had a lunch. So what I'm going to talk about today is energy transition, right? Across the globe, we are seeing industries, governments, regulators, they're all pushing the industries to move away from carbon emission resource generation sources to renewable, sustainable living. And utilities industry is at the center of all this transition. So if you look at the market situation, we are seeing some trends which are not just happening globally, but across the globe. Even in India, we are seeing huge growth in all these areas. Solar rooftop installations behind the meter, as well as grid scale solar installations. So our government of India, they have ambitious targets to, by 2025, by 2030, we want to have more than 600 gigawatt of renewable capacity addition. Solar is going to play a big role, and we have huge untapped potential in rooftop solar space, right? Smart homes, another big market, huge potential. We are expecting by 2026, across the globe, there will be around 347 million smart homes with the latest technologies and innovations to help the consumer become a sustainable and global earth-friendly citizens. Wind energy, another huge potential we are seeing globally. We are seeing by 2030 we will have around 2,400 gigawatt of wind energy capacity added, and India again is doing great. We already have around 40 gigawatt. We are expecting it to grow much in coming years. Electric vehicles, right? So we are all seeing what is happening in this space, automotive space, and utilities industry needs to support and enable this transition from internal combustion engines to electric vehicles. If we do not supply renewable, sustainable electricity, all the investment that is happening in the automotive industry will be waste, because unless the electricity supply for charging the vehicles is green, there's no point in making huge investments and moving away from internal combustion engines. Energy storage, another big area, because when we talk about sustainable generation, round the clock energy is the biggest challenge, right? How do we make sure we have got round the clock supply of green energy? And that's where energy storage plays a major role. We know the prices, the technology is quite expensive today, but we are seeing a lot of investments happening in R&D space. New types of battery technologies are coming up, which will make sure the storage of energy in the battery systems is at par in terms of pricing with what we are seeing in the renewable pricing. Plus, I think there's a huge potential on the pumped storage as well. We see a lot of announcements coming from the government on the push that government is having in, coming up with more and more pumped storage projects in India. If you look at this graph on the right, obviously the market value across all these drivers, energy storage, smart metering, smart homes, it's going to increase significantly. But the most interesting piece I see is on the energy management side. So just adding more and more capacity is not going to solve the problem, because renewable energy is volatile, it's variable, right? We cannot control it. So how do we manage the existing generation capacity that we already have to the maximum potential is a very important factor. And that's where energy management use cases, technologies are being discussed. There are new models coming up. And we have done some analysis. SAP, we worked with a few of our leading generation companies across the globe on what is the potential of energy management solutions globally, right? So if we look at the trends, by 2030, we are expecting globally we will have around 10,000 gigawatt of capacity. And out of that, around 60% will be renewable share. Gas will also increase by 25%, so it will be around 2,400 gigawatt globally. Coal will go down, but still it will be there. We are not getting rid of coal anytime soon. I think it will be there for a while to provide the reserve capacities and base load. But the point is, with the kind of capital expenditure, the governments and industry is doing in building the renewable capacity, the utilization factor of those assets, if we do not improve that, it's a huge, huge investment, and compared to the returns, it doesn't make a business case. So that's where flexibility services or energy management, what we call in simple terms, is a very important concept, right? So existing capacities, both renewable as well as conventional sources, how do they work together to make sure we have the optimal utilization of all the capacities, right? So I think this year in India, we saw peak demand of 234 gigawatt in August. So typically we used to have peak load, peak demand in June and July. This year it happened in August because of weather changes and so on. And I read an article just yesterday, Government of India, I think as part of the Electricity Act, they pushed the imported coal-based thermal generation sites, I think we have 15 in India, to increase their generation capacity to the maximum potential, because we are seeing peak demand in August, which is unexpected, right? So how do we counter that? How do we make sure we leverage all the generation sources we have together? That's where flexibility comes into play. And SAP, we did a project with one of our customers. So they had a gas-based generation plant, and the target was we wanted to reduce the fuel consumption for that plant, so that the customer, the generation company, can leverage its renewable sources and also the gas-based plants at the optimal level. And we saw some great potential in working on these flexibility services. So total capacity, if we have 50 gigawatt of gas-fired generation portfolio, just with the flexibility services that are available and the optimal generation scheduling that is available now with the real-time asset monitoring, customers could achieve savings of around 35 million euros just in 1 year by reducing the gas consumption for the same output that the plant was producing. Just managing the load across the units, you can achieve these kinds of efficiencies. And renewables, right? So on the other hand, if you have 50 gigawatt of renewables, if you leverage it and enroll it for the flexibility services as an aggregator, as an example, you are looking at a volume of 2,000 terawatt hours of flexibility, capacity available with you annually, which results in 100 million euros of savings in a year, right? So instead of adding more and more, the generation capacity, we can leverage existing ones as well. And that's a very important concept from capital expenditure planning point of view. And if you extrapolate this to the total capacity we have globally, we expect to have by 2030 around 6,000 gigawatts of renewables. And if we have the right technologies to control and aggregate all the generation sources behind the meter, front of the meter, to participate in flexibility services, we can have huge saving potentials in this. So this is energy management concept. We are working with some of the leading customers across the globe to bring all of these models to life. It's a journey, and we also have some customers in India we are talking with who are very excited to work with us on these kinds of business use cases. So now coming to the business models, right? Why utilities need to change? So it's not just about transition. There's also an opportunity for the whole industry to diversify the revenue streams that they have, right? To look at the new business models for making money, for making revenue, right? So green hydrogen, huge investment going in across the globe, including Government of India. They're pushing, capacity building for green hydrogen. Industries are collaborating. And utilities industry, we need to play a big role in this, right? So we need to supply green energy for these electrolysis units, generation sites for green hydrogen, to produce the hydrogen, which is carbon free. Huge potential for us, right? Flexibilities I already talked about, and this flexibility exists on the both, and at the industrial use case level also, the large industries that we have, they definitely play a big role in participating in the flexibility services, and obviously they will benefit as well, but it will also be a huge revenue stream for the utilities as well, because then they can manage the load on the demand side as well as from supply point of view. If they have control of the distributed generation sources that the industries have as the capacity, right? Captive generation sites. If they participate, it's a win-win for both the end consumer, the industries, as well as the utilities. Then we are seeing other models in the residential space which are coming up from participation point of view. Energy communities in India, there are already some trials which have happened in some of the cities where, but these are small scale trials, I would say at this stage from my point of view. They have not achieved the scale that is needed to make it really a viable business case, but these are good experiments that are happening. And in some of the markets we are seeing these kinds of technologies are really coming up and maturing, right? Smart buildings, smart meters, I will not talk about it. I think everybody here in the room knows the story of India in smart metering space. Also, as we move towards distributed generation sources, right? The concept of virtual power plants, how does a utility aggregate all the distributed generation sources that exist behind the meter as well as front of the meter? How do we bring them together, control them real time, right? To make it work like a virtual power plant to control the demand and supply situation. We're already seeing, technology is there, it is available now to achieve, these kinds of concepts, right? And that is what is going to drive the flexibility market as well, the services that we are talking about on energy management. These are the technologies which will help us, invest in the right areas, right? Not just keep on adding capacity. Operations, again, huge role, right? So utilities, until now in India, if we take an example, 70% of power procurement, or even 80%, I would say, happens on long-term agreements, right? It's a long-term contract that is signed between a generation and either a distribution company or an industrial consumer, right? Going forward, that will fundamentally shift. The proportion of electricity purchase that happens on long-term contract basis will significantly come down. And that means for the utilities companies, distribution companies who are, buyers of this electricity, when you have to buy it from the open market, real time, you need to have the right systems in place, right technology in place to understand what is your need in next 15 minutes, how you buy it from the market at the best optimal price margin so that, you are making money in the business. So again, this brings an element of, and from generation point of view also, how do you sell it real time? How do you control your generation schedule based on the knowledge of how your generation sites are performing, right? It's a very critical factor. We need to bring all these domains, real-time asset monitoring, real-time demand in the market, real-time supply situation, all of these together, and financials, of course, accounting, together to have the right systems in place for the industry, the ecosystem to work, right? Maintenance and repair, again, another topic, right? So we used to have few large generation sites. Now, instead of having few hundred sites, we have thousands of distributed generation sites spread across. The portfolio, the volume of assets has significantly gone up. And earlier, if 70% of the overall cost was input fuel, it is going to change. With renewables, the input cost is very less from operations point of view, right? So the focus will be more on the maintenance and repair of those assets. How do you make sure there is no downtime, right? Your assets are taken care of, because that will become the major portion of your overall cost in the value chain for generation of power. And again, infrastructure and planning, huge investments are going in this space as well. We are seeing smart grid technologies coming up, where, cybersecurity, another area which will have a huge impact from technology point of view to keep the nation's grid secure. So what is SAP's role? So I talked about, we are seeing all these business cases, but from SAP point of view, what are we doing to enable all of these use cases with the industry? So we have started with, so we cannot work on all of these together. There are so many use cases, so we have to pick and choose, of course. We have to prioritize. So we have already started working on some of these areas with the leading customers across the globe. So the first example I have here is distributed energy resources. We had a customer in Europe, E.ON, a very large European player in this space. So they were already installing, EV charging stations on the consumer premises. They were installing wall batteries, solar rooftops, and so on. So when they started, it was a small scale project. But then, looking at the overall consumer base they had, right, it became very challenging for E.ON to manage and operate these multiple assets that are now there on each customer's premise, right, and build them correctly and maintain and make changes as and when, customer requests for more rooftop solar, more batteries, multiple charging points. It became very complicated to manage and model these different scenarios at scale, right? So what we did was we did a co-innovation project with this customer. So we developed a application that helps you model these different assets that exist in our smart houses today, right, in a standardized manner, so that the manual intervention for the business teams or the IT teams to set up these models, both from functional point of view as well as from commercial point of view correctly, is happening in a standard manner. There's no chance of subjective or experts error coming into the picture. So I will share this example later on. The other thing which we are doing again with E.ON as well as with MBV, another customer, we are seeing a lot of new players coming in the market offering, the smart home systems, solar rooftop. If I pick, I'll not name the customer, but in India also we have big private distribution utilities as well who have got subsidiaries offering either rooftop solar or the smart home offerings to the customer, right? But as a consumer, at the end of the day or sometime in the future, I want to have one single experience. Right? I don't want to deal with 5 different entities, 5 different customer service representatives to get the services. I want one single point of contact where everything gets sorted. And if there are issues, I deal with one team, one entity, and I get one bill at the end of the day. Right? So we did a project with the MBV and E.ON where whatever services they were offering across their portfolio, across their subsidiaries, everything was managed through one single marketplace. Just think of it like Amazon for buying energy services, right? So you have all the products and services listed there. As a consumer, you choose what you want, or you deselect what you don't want. If you had it, you unsubscribe. And then rest of the things in terms of fulfillment, execution, installation, everything happens seamlessly in the back end, irrespective of whether the utility is doing it itself or it is coordinating with third-party vendors, partners who are installing, repairing, servicing, whatever customer has subscribed or purchased, right? One single seamless experience. So that's very important. And as we scale with these models, that's a very important area where, not just from front-end customer service perspective, but also from execution point of view to make it more efficient and seamless for the utility to work with the ecosystem, to work with the partners to provide these services and have one single bill at the end of the day. You need to have the right systems in place across business areas, right, to achieve this kind of experience. So we did that with E.ON. Then energy communities, again, very important area. So we have a customer which is using one of our partner solutions. They developed it on SAP's technology to allow the prosumers within a community to exchange, to buy and sell energy within themselves at an agreed price which they agree between themselves. There's no role that utility or a grid or a distributor plays. Prosumers living within a community, they agree on how much they can sell or how much they want to buy at what rate, and all the transactions happen within the platform and the settlement is done by the utility company as a service, right? So these kinds of concepts we are seeing. Integrated energy management and planning. This is the example I gave earlier when I showed the flexibility planning chart, where you can have just flexibility services at 50 gigawatt capacity level, you can have savings of 100 million euros a year. That's, what we have analyzed and extrapolated based on the pilots that we have done with this customer JERA in Japan, right? So JERA's plant is what we used as a pilot where we deployed the technology to bring real-time asset health information, bring the real-time demand from the market, and the financials, the cost of fuel, the cost of asset maintenance, everything together to understand what is the right energy schedule, generation schedule for the portfolio of plants that JERA has, so that the input fuel cost significantly goes down and the asset life improves, right? So the deterioration of assets is happening, in a controlled manner. E-mobility, again, this space is growing very fast and there are solutions coming across, and we have a e-mobility solution as well. The biggest challenge in e-mobility market today is there are infrastructure providers who set up the charging stations, the hardware that is needed. Obviously, there are softwares available to manage the charging stations for the hardware setup that has been done by these infrastructure providers for the EV charging stations. But when you have to do it at scale, you have to deal with multiple vendors, right? You cannot have one hardware provider across India for a particular player. You need to deal with multiple hardware vendors, multiple operators. But from technology point of view, you need to have one single system to operate and manage the charging stations across the country centrally, right? So you cannot have 20 softwares running in silos managing each station individually. That's not scalable, right? So that's where hardware agnostic e-mobility solutions to manage the charging operations is very, very important. And we are working with some of the leading partners on the hardware space as well. And we have some live customers already who are using our technology to scale the operations and the monitoring. Storage management, again, a big area. But I will quickly, I'm short of time, I'm just looking at the time. So I will quickly share the example of E.ON, the DER modeling which I talked about. So today, so this is the current picture, right? So typically in a premise, you would have different loads, right? You would have 1 meter where the energy is coming from the grid, and that's it. That's the typical model of a consumer in the house in most cases, right? And what is happening now is if customer goes for a solar rooftop, they also have a EV charging point installed in their premise, right? Just with these two additions, the complexity really goes up, right? Because you have 1 meter here with main grid, you have 1 meter to manage the generation of the solar rooftop, and then you have a sub meter which is connected with your main grid meter to measure the charging consumption, right? Because the rate of tariff for EV charging could be different from the tariff which utility is providing for the normal premise. So just this setup makes things little complicated, right? So if you have to do it for a few hundred or few thousand customers, you can continue using the existing technology, existing models to configure the systems for this kind of setup and then build the customer, right, accordingly. But if you have to do it for millions of customers, right, the chances of errors, manual errors happening in setting up these kinds of models, they increase exponentially. And E.ON really faced that problem. When they scaled, they found that at the end of the month, the bills that were going to the customer, the percentage of bills that were in error significantly went up, and then there were customer complaints, and then people in the back office teams, they were changing the configurations, the errors that were happening. If sub-meter is not configured correctly in the system, right, if it is not subtracting the consumption from the main meter for the rest of the house, your bill will be completely wrong. And then people started making changes manually in the system to correct the complaints that customers are raising, to resolve the complaints quickly. What it became at the end of the day is every single customer, the way the system was configured, it looked different. So if a new back office expert comes tomorrow in the organization, he will do it in a completely different way, the whole setup. It became a mess, right? So we have developed a solution, a front-end solution where you have the standard templates available for all these various configurations. You deploy these templates and it creates a instance in a graphical manner for that customer where you can clearly see how the energy flow is going to be, what are the tasks, activities it is measuring, and how it will be set up commercially, right? So this is something we co-developed with E.ON. Now it is a solution which is available with us. So these kinds of technologies, I have already explained this whole thing. I'll just skip this slide, right? And this is a JERA example I was giving, right? So we did this energy planning optimization project for this Japanese utility for a 3.5 gigawatt generation site. It is a gas-based plant, and we achieved a efficiency improvement of 0.8% in fuel consumption. So 0.8% sounds very small, but when you convert it into a dollar value or a euro value, we are looking at millions of euros in savings just in fuel consumption by managing the real-time asset health situation, the minimum and maximum operating range of the generation site, that they had multiple generation sites, bring it together with the fuel cost, real-time fuel cost, and 0.8% itself was a big number in dollar value for this customer to go ahead with this solution. And now we are looking at further expanding this into bringing real-time energy accounting as well. Another important factor is today, especially for the generation sites, accounting the cost allocation of what it takes to produce 1 megawatt hour of energy or electricity. Can you allocate the cost at individual asset level, at individual generation asset level? It's very difficult. At aggregate level, you can look at the financial numbers of any generation company and you can tell what is the cost, but you have to allocate that cost directly at individual asset level. It requires next level of engineering, from technology point of view, right? A lot of different domains need to integrate and talk together in one language to give you allocation at cost level. So this is the next level we are going with this customer, where we were looking at bringing the accounting, the asset information, the financials, the market, production cost, everything together into one single language, talking to each other real time to know what is my cost of production, for each asset level, what it takes to produce 1 megawatt hour of energy. And so as Partho said, we are not really going into the solution space today. It's more business discussion, but just to give you a gist of what we are talking about, all the use cases, I touched upon today, we already have, working solutions available in this space. Obviously, some of them are mature, some of them are evolving as we, do more and more implementation projects with customers. We get feedback and we are improving, but it's a very fast growing space, and we are investing heavily in all of these areas. And SAP is not doing it alone. We have a very healthy growing partner ecosystem as well, which is developing these innovative applications on top of our technology platform. And these are just some of the examples, partners, some big names, some small startups, which are working with us globally in each of these areas, complementing the overall solution portfolio and the functional and business capabilities that are needed for this. So I'm out of time. Hope this was useful. I'm looking forward to have, discussions with all of you over tea, coffee, dinner, and I wish all of you a very nice, enjoyable evening. Yeah. Thank you.